And it is this Saturday Coffee Klatch with Heather Lofthouse and yours truly, Robert Reich. And it's been quite a week, and it continues to be quite a week, Heather. I mean, we are seeing an amazing series of events politically, economically, and it's primary day in South Carolina today. Today, big day. Although
Big
it's not going to
day.
be, we know that Donald Trump is going to be the Republican nominee. So why are we even mentioning it? Because Nikki Haley tries and is trying to summon the anti-Trump vote in the Republican Party. But the reality is the Republican Party has turned into the Trump Party.
That's it. And I'm looking forward to reading a million Substacks telling me where the independents were, what if something else had changed, compared to what, counterfactuals.
Well,
So
here's the thing. I mean, half of the voters, this is what half of the voters in the United States right now are independent. They are not Republicans. Republicans only are 24% of the electorate. Democrats are about 24, 25% of the electorate. Independents are half the electorate. And so, and those independents tend to, if polls can be believed, and again, take it with a slight grain of salt, but they tend to be anti-Trump.
I
So
know. Well, and then there are those doing the polls, completing their polls, and then there are those who are going to vote. I mean, lots of subsets of things.
there's substacks and substacks of things.
No,
Exactly.
subsets, but also substacks.
Yes.
Okay, can we please talk about the jobs report numbers? Came out yesterday. Um,
They're very good. They're very, very good. I mean, this is about the best economy I have witnessed since the end of the 1990s. I mean, you've got rapid economic growth. You've got inflation down. I mean, the inflation number that the Fed is actually looking at is 2%. And you have got continued job growth. And I mean, everything you want, except for one thing that the Republicans are exploiting, and that is the fact that prices have not come down.
right.
Heather, why is it that prices have not come down?
Eeny, meeny, corporate power.
you,
Did I get
you did,
it?
how did you know? Well, that's right. I
I
mean,
mean, I been, yeah,
this is something mainstream media is not talking about, but they ought to be talking about. And Jerome Powell ought to be talking about, and Biden is starting to talk about. And that is that, we have not seen this degree of concentration of corporations in every market. And because they have that much corporate power, that much near monopoly power, they are able to raise their prices
right,
without consumers leaving them. At
right.
least,
And let's be clear. This is, I mean, the trajectory is significant. So corporations have always charged a lot for things, old news, but the amount that they are charging and the way they are doing this price gouging and the decisions they are making, not just based on supplies, right? But they are choosing to have these prices go up. There was a report by Groundwork Collective, which said over the past 2 years, prices have gone up by more, or because of inflation, 53%, excuse me, because of corporate pricing, 53% is where that rise is coming from. It is
exactly. And,
corporate profit.
we tend to think of all of the action being with the Fed. Now, the Fed on Wednesday was very, very clear that it's not going to reduce interest rates. Interest rates are already very, very high in order to tame inflation. But prices are not falling. And you and I both know that they're not falling because corporations have the power, the monopoly power, to keep them high.
Right.
The logical consequence of that is that you need antitrust enforcement to bust up the big corporations, to stop mergers, to make the economy more competitive. So
Right.
instead of listening to, the Fed, we ought to be paying a lot of attention to the antitrust enforcers.
Right. And you've said this before. The Biden administration has some fabulous people working on this stuff. There is a lot of action in the anti-monopoly space where there hasn't been. There's also action on junk fees. I mean, there's good
Yeah,
stuff happening. But
that's
the
right.
anti-monopoly, yeah,
And the Federal Trade Commission and the Antitrust Division of the Justice Department are where the action is in terms of getting prices back to where they should be.
right.
Uh, But the Republicans are running with this is one little piece of the puzzle, but they're running with it. And this is why, Trump is saying, oh, those figures, that you don't trust the figures from out of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And a lot of Republicans who are his allies are saying the economy is not nearly as good as it looks. Well, it is good. It is very good, except for this one issue that we've targeted just now.
I know. Conspiracy theories abound. I mean, they really do. And around these numbers, around all the statistics, but of course, it's a moving goalpost, right? I mean, either if the statistics work for him and the MAGA Republicans, they lean into them.
Well, conspiracy theories extend all the way to Taylor Swift. I mean, let's face it, if you want conspiracies, but we won't go there.
No, let's not go there. But you're right. But so it's wild, right? So we've talked about this. President Biden, is not getting ample credit. I mean, we don't have time to go into this again for what he's doing in terms of the economy. One of reason for that is people don't feel it, right? Even though we talked about the numbers earlier, even some wages went up, right? I think it was hourly pay. I mean, not enough, but still. So positive things are happening. But let's think about where he's had to come from. There's been a pandemic, and right now there are multiple wars going on, and this has been a horrible week. There are a drone strike, this, took out and killed 3 U.S. American soldiers, which is horrible. I mean, thousands of people are dying besides those 3 soldiers. And then the latest airstrikes. Tell us about that. What's happening?
The Biden administration does not want the Middle East to become a general war zone, and has been trying to confine the Israeli-Hamas conflict. But you can't really easily do that because you've got the Houthis who are in Yemen. You've got other groups that are supported by Iran and Iranians, and it's becoming a regional war. And of course, let's face it, Ukraine is not that far away from the Middle East, and Putin is clearly involved, directly or indirectly. So you've got the Iranians, you've got Putin, you've got now Biden, who has authorized these strikes. They took place yesterday in Iraq and in Syria.
Right.
This is clearly in retaliation for that drone strike that killed 3 American servicemen and injured many, many more. But where does this end, Heather?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. And also, how is it going to be used in U.S. politics? I mean, secondary question. It's been so interesting to watch how all of these wars are being weaponized. I mean, that sounds like a tautology. And what's happening in terms of Mayorkas and being impeached. I mean, what's happening with that? Can you talk about
Mayorkas? I mean, Mayorkas, the head of Homeland Security, Secretary of Homeland Security, is being impeached by the Republican House for what? For nothing, because they say he is too easy on the border. Right. Well, listen, he was the one who negotiated for the Biden administration with Republican senators a very, very tough, if not draconian, border bill. And yet the House Republicans are doing, what House Republicans are now doing. I mean, they're just picking any issue they can. They're going after Joe Biden. They're planning to impeach him as well. Impeachment, talk about the kind of weaponization of everything. Impeachment becomes just another political strategy.
Right. And you wrote a little bit about this week, but in terms of the child tax credit, what is happening it's trying to, happen in a bipartisan way, but what are you seeing with that?
Well, it's interesting. It did come out of the House, which was staggering. I mean, everybody had said there's no possibility that House of Representatives, given that that fierce Republican majority, with the Freedom Caucus, the kind of demands the Freedom Caucus were making. There's no way that anything is going to come out of that House, but it did. And a child tax credit, which part of it, let's face it, Heather, is very good. It means that you reduce child poverty, something in the order of 16 million young people are
It's
better
huge.
off. They're not all out of poverty, about 500,000 come out of poverty. So the child tax credit is not nothing. It's important for working families and poor working families. The
But
problem,
what else is in it? Here we go.
the problem is that it also is providing a big tax break for the top 1% and even bigger for the top 1/10 of 1%. So, this is a question that I used to ask in my class all the time. If I could snap my fingers and reduce poverty, but at the same time make inequality bigger because I'm giving the rich even a bigger advantage, would you go along with it? And most of my class said no. And I would say back to them, wait a minute. You mean you're sacrificing children? Isn't it unquestionably a good thing to give children, get children out of poverty?
Yep.
But a lot of people say no, not if we're going to, not if the price is widening inequality and giving the very, very rich even a bigger break.
Well, your students at UC Berkeley said that, and then we've seen it online this week with a lot of people saying it, progressives, otherwise. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's interesting. It really does split the community, the Democrats, and a lot of progressives. Uh, but it's kind of an example of what we're getting
mhm,
from this Congress, and
right.
particularly from Republicans. The only way you get anything that's decent, that's humane, is you combine it with something that's indecent and
I know,
inhumane.
which is not a great formula, but is it? I mean, but it really is. And this is what you taught us all in policy school and other people, compared to what? So it's no child tax credit or child tax credit plus blank.
Well, the same thing, Heather, applies to the border. I
Yep.
mean, you've got the big fight over the border, and the Biden administration looks like it caved
Yeah.
to the demands of the Republicans because why? Because the Biden administration did not want to have this border issue hanging over its head during the election. But Donald Trump comes in and says, I want the border hanging over Biden's head for the election. So I don't want any agreement over the border. And that means Ukraine. There's not going to be funding for Ukraine. And that
Yep.
is a not only humanitarian disaster, but it does potentially invite uh, Putin for even more aggressive action by
Yep.
Putin.
Yeah. One other Substack I like this week. I'm proud of us. We've covered a lot of ground today, but I did want to talk about Elon Musk's compensation package.
You really want to talk about Elon Musk?
I
I
mean,
mean, Elon
how does
Musk.
his compensation package? Does
Wait
it?
a minute,
You
but
want
Heather,
to?
Elon. If I'm not talking about Donald Trump,
I'm
um,
sorry.
I have to talk about Elon Musk.
I'm sorry.
Elon Musk comes as close to Donald Trump in the private sector as any human being could. I mean, he's very inventive. He comes up with a lot of ideas. More power to him. But he also, as a person in terms of somebody who you would trust. As an employee, would you trust him? As an investor, would you trust him? As a consumer, would you trust him?
You can. I mean, he's proven it. But so his compensation package ruled excessive. Excessive.
It
But
was
tell
ruled
us
excessive. That's right, by a chancellor in Delaware, in the Delaware Chancery Court, which really is. It's very interesting because most corporations in America, almost all big corporations, are headquartered officially, that is, incorporated in the state of Delaware. This little tiny state, this little Joe Biden state. Why are they incorporated there?
not
Because
the beaches, not
there are a
the
lot of advantages to incorporating in Delaware in terms of the streamlining of the your legal battles, and also getting even more protection, liability than you get in most other states. Uh,
right.
but but said the Chancery Court in Delaware, which is the big corporate court, it said no, no, you can't control your board of directors if you're a public company. Elon Musk, you can't control them and have them award you this gigantic $56 billion, essentially, what? Oh,
Gift.
a gift.
Gift card.
And so, but I think the big news there is not only the news about Elon Musk, But the Court of Chancery, of all courts, I never would have expected it, has established a principle that there is such a thing as excessive compensation.
That's it.
Heather,
Yeah.
excessive compensation. Can you
I know.
imagine?
I can. I can only imagine.
What happens to Amazon and Jeff Bezos, and what happens to Mark
Oh,
Zuckerberg, and what happens to Warren Buffett? And I mean, they must be running around looking, asking their lawyers, is my
right.
compensation justified? Is it excessive?
Well, more will be revealed, right? Is there going to be a threshold? I think you came up with the number, or somebody did that. So we used to have, there was a realistic balance between CEO pay and average or median worker pay at a given company, right? And then it's been up to 300, and then it's been even higher. But this was 18,000 to 1.
That's right.
Wasn't it?
Elon, well, when Elon, the tricky bit here is that most of these executives in these very, very rich companies, they get paid in stock options.
Right.
So, and their actual living expenses, they just borrow against the value of their stock portfolio. And that's what Elon Musk does, and that's what a lot of them, Jeff Bezos and others do. But so what's their actual income?
Right.
Well, Elon Musk actually, he exercises his stock option because they were going to basically go out of, they were going to be no longer be available after 2022. He exercises them in 2022, and it means that the ratio of his total compensation that year to the typical worker in Tesla was
Right.
18,000 to 1.
So, I mean, you have to laugh. It's obscene. And I'm glad that, the Chancellery's judge, Delaware, said, not allowed. We're bringing attention to this.
Yes, and also, there are some Democrats in Congress who are doing something else very important. They have a new tax bill didn't get very much attention or publicity, but it's very, very important. And that tax bill, it's Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, etc. That tax bill would increase corporate taxes based upon the ratio of executive pay to the typical worker's pay. And the worse the ratio, the higher the taxes.
Right. And San Francisco has had some wins around that. Yeah, it's important to mention that. So while there's horrible things happening, there's progress. This is the way of the world. How many steps forward and how many steps back? I mean, it's scary, but if we have to suffer through it all, I'm glad to be having discussions about it with you over coffee.
And I with you, Heather. And all of you out there, have a wonderful week. We're going to be back. Actually, there's a lot of room for optimism. I mean, you think Jon Stewart is coming back on the air. We didn't talk about that, but he's coming back on the air. And you've got the last week's huge defamation judgment against Donald Trump. E. Jean Carroll. I mean, we didn't have a chance to talk about that. A lot of good things in the news and good reasons to raise your cup and celebrate, at least for now. We'll see you all next week.